Hi everyone, and welcome to the Nutrition Focused Boosting Balance for Bone Health session today. Our presenters are myself, Brittany Van Bree, a registered dietitian with the North Lambton Community Health Center, and Sarah Kidd, a registered dietitian with the Rapids Family Health Team. Our presentation today will cover how nutrition can affect bone health through key nutrients like calcium and vitamin D. We will provide information on the recommended amounts of these nutrients and what foods they can be found in. We will also review other dietary strategies that can support bone health, and we will focus on some tools and resources that you can utilize after today's presentation to help improve your bone health in the future. One of the most important nutrients in our body when we think about bone health is calcium, and that's because one of calcium's main functions is to provide our bones with their strength. Calcium is actually the most abundant mineral in the body and can be found in just about every cell, including places like the heart, nerves, and muscles, with more than 95% of it being stored in our bones and teeth. Calcium is not actually produced within our bodies, which is why it's very important that we get enough from our diet. It's also not actually static or fixed in place as most people think of it. It is constantly being dissolved and reformed in our bodies all the time. So what happens when we consume this calcium is our body will then take it and distribute it within our body to where it's needed, and then any extra left over will be stored in our bones. Because calcium is so important, the body carefully regulates the supply to ensure enough is available for the body to function properly. If we are not consuming the right amount of calcium, it will be taken from our bones to be used elsewhere, like the nerves, muscles, heart, or to even help clot blood. So in this sense, the body can be compared to a bank, in that we need to make deposits of calcium throughout our lifetime, or our body will make withdrawals from our bones. When calcium is taken from our bones, they become weaker and weaker, as you can see from the picture on this slide. The bone on the left side is an example of someone who is consuming the appropriate amount of calcium, so enough is being stored in the bone to keep them strong and healthy. The more fragile bone on the right side is an example of someone who is not consuming enough calcium, so therefore the body is withdrawing calcium from those bones to be used elsewhere. Consuming low amounts of calcium over longer periods of time can lead to issues such as osteoporosis. This slide provides information on what the recommended amount of calcium is for different age groups. These recommendations become especially important over 50 years old because this is when we are at a higher risk of having issues such as osteoporosis and falls. For men and women over 50, Health Canada defines adequate calcium intake as 1,200 milligrams daily. Previously, this recommendation was higher, but with some recent studies suggesting high intake of calcium may be a risk factor for cardiac events, this was lowered to 1,200 milligrams. How can you be sure that you're getting your recommended daily intake of calcium? Well, as I mentioned earlier, dietary sources of calcium are very important as our body is unable to make its own supply. The highest source of calcium per serving is milk, yogurt, and fortified milk alternatives. However, not all dairy products are as high in calcium as these. Cream cheese, for example, is much lower in calcium than milk and yogurt. Salmon and sardines are also very good sources of calcium, but in order for you to get this calcium, they need to contain the bones. So the next time you purchase a can of salmon, instead of throwing away the bones, simply mash them into the salmon. You will be surprised with how soft the bones are and how easily they are to mix in with the fish. Breads, leafy green vegetables, and meat contain very small amounts of calcium. However, there are some protein alternatives that do contain calcium, like baked beans, soybeans, white beans, and you can even purchase tofu that's made with calcium. There is also calcium present in other plant-based foods like sesame seeds, rhubarb, Swiss chard, and spinach. However, it's not very well absorbed. That's because these foods contain oxalates, which can bind calcium and interfere with its absorption. So even though these foods may provide you with some calcium, it's not recommended to rely solely on them as your dietary calcium sources. The easiest and best way to ensure you meet your calcium needs is to include 3 servings of milk or milk alternatives daily. This could be as easy as having 3 cups of milk per day, 1 with each meal, or you could have 2 cups of milk and 1 serving of yogurt per day as another example. 1 serving of yogurt is about 3/4 of a cup. By achieving this, you can reach about 900 milligrams of calcium per day, which, yes, is a little bit lower than the 1200 milligrams recommended, but the extra 300 milligrams should be being made up from the rest of your diet if you are consuming the foods mentioned on the previous slide. These foods included sardines and salmon, beans, tofu, nuts and seeds, and leafy greens. So if you at least maintain the 3 servings of milk or milk alternatives daily, then you know on most days you should be meeting your needs. Other tips and tricks for getting in some extra dietary calcium in your day could include things like making your oatmeal with milk or milk alternatives versus water, using milk as a base in casseroles, soups, pastas, or adding skim milk powder instead, adding yogurt to the top of your baked potato instead of sour cream, or you could even make yogurt-based dips for fruits and veggies. You could also sneak in some extra dietary calcium in your day without even having to think about it if you include things like making your oatmeal with milk or milk alternatives instead of water, using milk as a base in casseroles, soups, pastas, or you could add skim milk powder instead, adding plain yogurt to the top of your baked potato instead of sour cream, or you could even make yogurt-based dips for fruits and veggies. People simply don't like milk and refuse to drink it. Other people have difficulty tolerating lactose, which is the natural sugar found in milk and what most people know of as lactose intolerant. If you are one of these people, the good news is that you can still meet your calcium needs without relying solely on dairy. Aside from dairy, you can focus on getting your calcium intake from some of the calcium-containing foods I discussed earlier, like canned salmon or sardines with the bones. You could add cooked soybeans or white beans to salads, chilies, or casseroles. You could also add chopped almonds to a variety of dishes such as cereals, salads, or just have them plain as a snack. Another good option is using fortified tofu in meals like stir fries and curries, or you could even add the fortified tofu to smoothies. It has very little taste and it can provide the beverage with a really nice, smooth texture. When it comes to those who are lactose intolerant specifically, you could try the option of lactose-free milk, which you should be able to purchase at your local grocery store. Another option is to try assessing your tolerance to small amounts of lactose. Studies have shown if you consume a small amount of lactose every day, you can actually build up your tolerance. This could mean starting with about 2 to 4 ounces of cow's milk daily and building up slowly from there. You could also try mixing regular cow's milk with lactose-free milk. So for example, doing 6 ounces of lactose-free milk with 2 ounces of regular milk, and slowly weaning down the amount of lactose-free milk until you're able to tolerate a full cup of regular milk. If you are experiencing symptoms of lactose intolerant while trying this, simply back off the amount of regular milk you're consuming until the symptoms stop, and then slowly start with a small amount and work your way up again. It's understandable, though, that some people may not want to try this option, as symptoms of lactose intolerance can be quite uncomfortable. For those of you who are hesitant to assess your tolerance, there is also the option of taking lactase tablets or drops with meals. These help you to better digest lactose and can be found at most pharmacies. There are also milk alternatives on the shelf that can be used in replacement of cow's milk. When we compare cow's milk to these substitutes, it's important to look at 3 important nutritional components: calcium, protein, and vitamin D. With calcium, cow's milk, almond milk, and soy milk are quite comparable. 1 cup of almond milk or soy milk has the same amount of calcium as cow's milk. However, the calcium in soy beverage is absorbed slower at the rate of about 75% when compared to cow's milk. It's also important to remember when you purchase these milk substitutes to shake the container well prior to pouring, as the calcium can sometimes stick to the bottom of these containers. If you forget to do this, you may be missing out on some of the calcium. When it comes to protein, soy milk is the closest to cow's milk. There is 7 grams of protein per cup in soy milk versus 9 grams of protein per cup in cow's milk. Soy has also been proven to reduce cholesterol and can therefore aid in cardiovascular health. Almond milk, on the other hand, has very little or no protein. It has about 1 gram of protein per cup. So when comparing protein, soy milk definitely comes out on top of the milk substitutes. It is now mandated when it comes to vitamin D that milk substitutes have to be fortified with vitamin D. So any milk substitute you purchase should contain vitamin D. However, this does not include things like goat's milk and goat's milk powder. So if you are purchasing these, make sure you read the packaging to see if it has been fortified with vitamin D. This is important because vitamin D assists with the absorption of calcium, which Sarah will discuss in more detail later on in this presentation. In addition to foods that enhance calcium intake, there are also foods that cause calcium loss. One of these foods is salt or sodium, which increases urinary calcium loss. To avoid high salt intake, aim for more whole foods and less packaged foods. If you are consuming packaged foods, be sure to read labels and choose the ones marked as reduced sodium or no salt added. And be sure to limit your use of table salt and other salt-containing spices like garlic salt. Another source of calcium loss is through caffeine, as it can also increase your urinary calcium loss, and it can decrease the absorption of calcium through the intestine. Limit your caffeine intake to 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day, or 4 cups of tea a day. You are able to have a little bit more tea than coffee because some teas, like green and black teas, can actually provide some bone-building benefits that coffee does not. If you consume more than the recommended number of cups a day of coffee or tea, have at least 1 glass of milk for every extra cup of caffeine-containing beverage. Alcohol is another source of calcium loss as it interferes with the absorption and use of calcium and vitamin D, and it can also adversely affect your balance, which could lead to things like falls or fractures. Reduce your long-term health risks by drinking no more than 10 drinks a week for women, with no more than 2 drinks on a given day, and less than 15 drinks a week for men, with no more than 3 drinks on most days.
In addition to calcium, there are other nutrients we will highlight that play a role in your bone health and balance. One of these key nutrients is vitamin D. Vitamin D and calcium work together to help your bones stay strong. Vitamin D helps the body absorb and use calcium. Without it, we would only absorb a very small amount of the calcium we get from our food. You can think of vitamin D as a key that unlocks the door and lets the calcium into your body. For this reason, vitamin D plays a very important role in helping you build and maintain stronger bones. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin that is stored in the body's fat tissues until it needs to be used. This is why we don't need to get our calcium and vitamin D at the same time for the benefit of improved calcium absorption. Vitamin D also helps support muscle function, which is needed to improve balance and decrease the risk of falls. Other important roles include helping with nerve transmission throughout the body and helping your immune system work properly. The amount of vitamin D that you need each day depends on your age. Here are some of the general recommendations for adults. Healthy adults up to the age of 70, including pregnant and breastfeeding women, require 600 international units of vitamin D per day. Adults over 70 require 800 international units of vitamin D per day. And all adults with osteoporosis, multiple fractures, or conditions that affect vitamin D absorption will require at least 800 international units of vitamin D per day. So, can these recommendations be met by food alone? Very few foods naturally have vitamin D. It's not found in most of the foods we commonly eat. The best natural sources of vitamin D are egg yolks and fatty fish like salmon, sardines, trout, and tuna. You can see that 2 large egg yolks contain between 52 and 88 international units of vitamin D, and the amount in fish depends on the type of fish. For example, 3 ounces of canned sockeye salmon has about 530 international units, and 3 ounces of tuna has about 60 international units. Other major dietary sources of vitamin D are foods that have had vitamin D added to them. In Canada, it's mandated that cow's milk and margarine are fortified with vitamin D. You can see that 1 cup of cow's milk has 105 international units of vitamin D, while 1 teaspoon of margarine has 25 international units. Goat's milk, plant-based milk alternatives like soy beverage, and some calcium-fortified orange juices are also allowed to have vitamin D added to them. Cheese and yogurt can be made with vitamin D fortified milk, but the end product doesn't have as much vitamin D as the milk alone. When you look over these numbers, do you think that you can get 600 to 800 international units of vitamin D per day from your diet? The answer to this question is that it's nearly impossible for adults to get enough vitamin D from food alone. So what are some other ways that we can get the vitamin D we need? You may have heard that we can get vitamin D from being in the sun. Vitamin D is often called the sunshine vitamin. This is because the sun's rays interact with our skin to make vitamin D. But there are many limitations, like the use of sunscreen, the thickness of clothing, reduced sun exposure in the winter, air pollution, skin pigmentation, and more. Also, as we age, the skin's ability to make vitamin D decreases. For these reasons, Osteoporosis Canada recommends vitamin D supplements for Canadian adults year-round. It's recommended that you purchase vitamin D3. You can buy vitamin D3 supplements over the counter at your pharmacy. Osteoporosis Canada recommends that healthy adults between the ages of 19 and 50, including pregnant or breastfeeding women, get 400 to 1,000 international units of vitamin D per day from supplements. Adults over 50 or younger adults at high risk should get 800 to 2,000 international units of vitamin D per day from supplements. High risk includes people with osteoporosis, multiple fractures, or conditions affecting vitamin D absorption. It's important that you speak to your primary healthcare provider or your dietitian about how much you need. Note that many multivitamins and supplements can contain some vitamin D, so it's important that you read the labels carefully. Your total daily vitamin D intake should not be more than 4,000 international units a day, unless this is done under a doctor's medical supervision. Too much vitamin D can have adverse health effects. Check with your pharmacist if you're unsure about how much you are getting. Other boosting balance advice includes preventing dehydration. Dehydration, or a lack of fluids in your body, can lead to low blood pressure, which can bring on a fall. You can become dehydrated without even realizing it if the weather's warm, or if you're taking diuretics or water pills, or other medications. The amount of fluid you need every day depends on several factors like your age, sex, activity levels, and the weather. Here are some general tips to keep your body hydrated. First, drink 2 to 3 cups of low-fat milk or fortified milk alternatives each day. Then drink your coffees and your teas in moderation. For coffee, limit yourself to 2 to 3 cups a day, or limit your teas to 4 cups a day. Finally, drink water. Drink water to top up your fluid intake throughout the day. Drink a glass of water when you wake up. Drink a glass of water before each meal. Drink a glass of water before, during, and after exercise. In addition to getting enough calcium and vitamin D each day, it's also recommended to eat a variety of healthy foods to help support bone health and muscle function for boosting your balance. You can plan your meals using Canada's Food Guide to make sure your diet has a variety of healthy foods. Canada's Food Guide uses a plate model that divides your plate into 3 sections. Half of your plate is made up of vegetables and fruits. A quarter of your plate is made up of protein foods, and a quarter of your plate is made up of whole grain foods. It's recommended to drink water with meals and throughout the day to keep you hydrated. Now we'll take a look at the benefits of each component of the plate. It's important to fill half your plate with veggies and fruits. Vegetables and fruits have potassium, magnesium, and vitamin K, which all help keep your bones strong and healthy. Vitamin K, which is found in high amounts in dark leafy green vegetables like spinach, kale, and broccoli, may also help prevent fractures. Aim for a variety of different colors on your plate and enjoy your veggies and fruits, fresh, frozen, or canned. They're all nutritious options. Aim for at least 7 servings of vegetables and fruits each day. A serving of vegetables is a half a cup of fresh, frozen, or canned vegetables, a half a cup of cooked leafy greens, or 1 cup of raw leafy greens or salad. A serving of fruit is generally 1 medium-sized piece of fruit, which is about the size of your fist, like an apple or an orange, or half of a cup of fresh, frozen, or canned fruit. If you're having canned fruit or veggies, try to aim for canned fruit that's been packed in water versus syrup or juice to lower the sugar content. And remember to rinse canned vegetables to remove some of that salt. Another important part of your meal is protein. Protein is necessary for building and repairing body tissues, including your bones and muscles. Protein gives bone its strength and flexibility, and it's also a component of your muscles, which are important for mobility and preventing falls. Canada's Food Guide recommends that you fill a quarter of your plate with protein at each meal, breakfast, lunch, and supper. This will help you to get the protein that your body needs each day. Canada's Food Guide recommends eating plant-based protein foods more often. Plant proteins include legumes like kidney beans, black beans, lentils, and chickpeas, as well as nuts, seeds, tofu, edamame, and fortified soy beverage. These foods can be incorporated into your meals in a variety of ways, like vegetarian chili, bean burritos, bean salad, tofu stir-fry, natural peanut butter on whole grain toast, and more. Lean animal proteins include fish, shellfish, eggs, poultry, lean red meat, and low-fat dairy products. As mentioned earlier, it is recommended to have 2 to 3 servings of milk and alternatives each day to help meet your daily calcium needs. But there are benefits to including a variety of other proteins in your meals in addition to these milk and alternatives. Many of the plant protein foods not only help keep your heart healthy, but they are also high in magnesium, which helps keep your bones, muscles, and nerves healthy. Animal proteins like meat, eggs, fish, and milk also have vitamin B12, which is an important nutrient in bone formation. And eating at least 6 ounces of fish each week can help you get more vitamin D into your diet, as well as those heart-healthy omega-3 fats. Canada's Food Guide recommends filling the final quarter of your plate with whole grains. Whole grains include quinoa, whole grain pasta, and whole grain bread, oatmeal, brown rice, wild rice, bulgur, and more. Whole grains are generally low in bone-building nutrients, but they're high in fiber, minerals, and vitamins to help lower your risk of cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. They also provide you with carbohydrates for energy. Let's now put all of these recommendations together. Overall, balancing your meals using Canada's Food Guide, in addition to getting your daily calcium requirement of 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams of calcium per day, can help your bone health and help boost balance. There are several nutrition tools and resources that are available online to give you more information, including an interactive calcium calculator available at osteoporosis.ca, Canada's Food Guide available online through Health Canada's website, unlockfood.ca brought to you by Dietitians of Canada, and the Osteoporosis Canada website. If you would like to connect with a registered dietitian at Rapids Family Health Team or the North Lambton Community Health Center, or simply learn more about our nutrition services and programs, please call our main office lines or visit our websites for more information. Thank you for listening to our presentation.